Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill, time management strategist, author, and award-winning speaker, and advocate for all things growth in motherhood. If you are listening today, a quick reminder that you can also watch this episode on YouTube and see the conversation that I'm having with Kristina live in action. So Kristina Nation is a parent, coach, a speaker, and a best-selling author. So we have a lot in common. With a passion for empowering families, Kristina offers invaluable insights and practical strategies to help parents navigate the challenges of raising teens today. Her dynamic speaking style and relatable approach have inspired audiences around the globe. And today I am so lucky to have her here as a guest. We're going to be really talking today about teens, specifically how we can support them, how we can advocate for them when they are struggling, how we can make sure that we keep connected with them. I am here for it because we have some teens in our household and some preteens. So I am all ears. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to chat with you. I know you are a wealth of wisdom and information and advice on this topic, and I am curious to know um, how this came to be your topic that you teach on. How has your world evolved and your motherhood journey evolved so that this is something that you know so much about?
Yeah, well, the motherhood journey has been one of many growth, right? So I first learned positive discipline when my youngest was 3 and my eldest was entering adolescence. And boy, did I need it. I definitely was searching for some more tools because what worked when he was young was no longer working.
Yeah, I hear that one.
Yeah. So I learned positive discipline and started applying it to my family and saw such a tremendous difference in how I was connecting with my kids. And I was, starting to focus on, really being intentional and taking that pause and thinking about how I wanted to respond instead of just instantly reacting and yelling like I used to. So it made such a huge impact in my family that I started teaching positive discipline workshops so that I could help other families have the same growth and experience and connection that I was experiencing. Then through the journey of parenthood, my kids grew older, and my daughter started or entered adolescence, and then started struggling with depression. And all the years of being in positive discipline and teaching workshops and raising teens, I thought I had it all down. And then I realized that I was struggling and I felt helpless and I needed more tools and more support. So I reached out to my parent coaches and friends and looked into more resources and really learned that when you're parenting a teen it can be scary, but when you're parenting a teen with depression it can be just so scary. And so I just really needed that support and realized that there were other parents out there that were struggling as well and wanted to support them. So that's how I started this journey.
That's amazing. I love hearing people's stories because it's always like our struggles that inspire the work that we do, right? Like we teach what we need to learn almost. So I love hearing about how it all came to be for you. And I can relate to the teen with depression because I'm not parenting a teen with depression, but I was a teen who had
Mm.
depression when I was 14 and 15. That was a big thing for me and it went undiagnosed and sort of uh disrespected almost or like swept under the rug when I reached out for help. And I think that there's a lot of value in us as parents being able to understand for our kids like what it means, how we can help them when they're struggling, especially in those teen years. And wonder if you could speak a little bit about like what does it look like for a teenager to be depressed? Like, is it the same as we would expect in an adult version of depression, or are there signs that we need to be on the lookout for? And I mean, this is a bit of a loaded question. But how do we know what's going on with them if they're not telling us? Because teenagers are sullen, typically, right?
Yeah,
Where's the
yeah.
where's the line?
Exactly, and sometimes they don't know. Like,
Right.
they're not sure what's going on. So it is such a good question that many, many parents ask, and that is why I have a free resource of the 10 ways to distinguish between typical teen phase and teen depression. Because a lot of times, we hear that it's typical for teenagers to shut themselves in their room and not want to spend time with family. It's typical for them to skip classes, skip school, or oversleep and not make it to school, or sleep all day. They need extra sleep. So we hear, all of these things as typical in the teenage phase. But really, what's going on is something that we need to take a bigger look at. And how we know is, looking at some of the different symptoms. For example, the sleeping all the time, right? Yes, teenagers do require more sleep, and their rhythms change, where they're, going to bed later and waking up later, and so, that is typical. But if, they're struggling to wake up in the morning, they're falling asleep right after school, they're, it just seems like even on the weekends, they're so tired, they're fatigued, they don't have the energy. Um, that could be a symptom of something more going on. Yes, it may be true that their friends are more a priority than family during the teen years, but if they are, just no longer want to be involved in any of the family activities, or even shutting out friends, or just not seeming like they're interested in activities that they were once really interested in. Like, for example, my daughter was a national gymnast for 10 years, and then all of a sudden she was feeling burnt out and didn't want to do gymnastics anymore. So that could be a sign. So basically, any of these things, if they're persisting, on more of an extreme level and more than 2 weeks long, or they're in combination of more than a couple of symptoms, then this should be something that we should be concerned about and looking for additional support. And what I always tell parents is, if you're concerned, if you're worried, then listen to that intuition. Like, your child better than anyone. And if you're feeling worried, then there's probably a good cause and time to reach out for some additional support.
And what does that first step look like? Is it a conversation with the teen? Is it doing some research as a parent with parent coaches, with like books and YouTube? Like, where do we start to even approach this journey of learning on how we can support them?
Yeah, definitely starting with a conversation with your teen. Like we talked about earlier, sometimes, they're not sure what's going on themselves. Sometimes they don't feel safe enough to open up and express how they're feeling. But trying to approach them and just starting with, I'm noticing some behaviors that are concerning me. I'm noticing that, you're having a hard time getting to school, or your grades are slipping. I'm noticing that you're not wanting to hang out with your friends or play soccer anymore. I'm noticing, so starting with I'm notice, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, what's going on for you? How have you been feeling lately? Is there anything that you would like to share with me? And just let them know that you are there for them. That's the number one. And if they do share that they've been struggling, or they're not feeling so happy lately, then make sure to validate that. Make sure to validate those feelings, like, hey, I get it. Life can be tough sometimes. It's not fun to have to deal with all the pressures during the teen years, so validate them and let them know that you're there to support them. Ask them, what could I do that would be helpful? You know, it could just be listening. It could be, look, finding additional support. Like, should we contact your doctor? Would you like to talk to your school psychologist or counselor? Approach how we can get additional help. And then, yes, finding that additional help. So you could start with your pediatrician, you could start with your school counselor, you could, depending on who they feel more comfortable with. Do they have a good relationship with their doctor? Do they have a favorite teacher? Do they have you know and then reach out for, like you mentioned, a parent coach, because not only does your teen need support, but you as the parent need support. Parenting a teen is hard. Parenting a teen struggling with depression is even harder, and we need all of the support we can get. So, reach out and find yourself a good parent coach that has experience with teenagers and teens struggling with depression, and get the support that you need as well.
I love that advice. It's a big piece of the puzzle, where the parent fills an advocate role for the teen, right? And I think in general, this can be a piece of the parenting puzzle. I have a special needs child, so I'm advocating a lot on his behalf, and it is really taxing on me as the mom. And so, acknowledging that you're going to need the support as you're supporting your teen, that's a big one. And also, just I wonder, I liked how you had said that, um, using the language "I've noticed." Can you expand a little bit more on those conversations that we can have with our kids?
Yeah. Yeah. So we want to come from, a non-judgmental, we want to come from a non-judgmental space. We want to come from, I'm observing frame when we are, bringing up things that we're noticing. A lot of times if our teen is struggling, they might feel some shame around that. They might feel, like, so you definitely don't want to come at, them like you're judging that they're, missing school or they're not hanging out with their friends. So just, stating in such a way that you're observing, and that you're just a little worried about, you know what's going on for them, and be, just coming from a supportive stance.
Thank you. For anyone who's watching the YouTube video at this point, you've noticed that I just left and had a major coughing attack. Apologies for that. Um, but I like this idea of acknowledging the underlying emotions that we might not see, but they might feel about the shame, about talking about it and having these feelings, and them not really understanding, is it hormones? Is it normal? At what point in time do I need some support? And keeping that open dialogue and that connection going must be such a big piece of the puzzle. I know I would have really appreciated that when I was in that situation, right? And
Um,
can you speak to current generation with technology and all the things that kids are experiencing post pandemic? How much does that factor in it? And in what ways are kids and teens these days dealing with a whole different world than we had to deal with? And can we really understand them? That's something that I hear a lot, is that kids don't think that we understand them. And we probably don't, because we haven't had that same experience. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, sometimes our teens don't feel safe to come to us because they don't feel like we get it. They don't feel like we understand. And so it's really important that whenever they do share something with us, that we, really validate and let them know that you understand, but also, like, don't just be like, I get it. Like how you said that you experienced as a teen, so did I. As a teen, I really struggled with depression. So when my daughter came to me and and let me know how she was feeling and the things that she was thinking and how she was struggling. I was like, oh, honey, I get it. I've been there. But actually, that's not what she wanted to hear because she felt like it belittled her own experience. She didn't want to hear like, oh, it's so common, so many teens are struggling, because then she felt like, oh, it's no big deal, everyone goes through it. And so it didn't validate her feelings. So the most important way that we can show our teens that we do get it, that we do understand, is by using that active listening and reflecting back what we're hearing them say and validating. Then they feel heard and understood. And yeah, it is a different world nowadays with technology and social media. And it goes both ways, because in one way, social media can contribute to depression and anxiety. For one reason is the constant on you know on point with social media and friends and the friend drama and the and it's just 24/7. Like before, we would come home from school and have a break from all of that, but nowadays it's just go 24/7. And it can cause some challenges with our mental health, especially that social comparison as well, when we feel like, oh, everyone has so many friends and they're so cool and they're doing all of these things, and here I am, struggling, and I don't have that many friends, or whatever it could be. That social comparison can lead to lower self-esteem as well, which can lead to feelings of depression. So, but at the same time, being connected through social media and friends can be a helpful coping skill for some teens as well. So it really can go both ways. And so the important thing is just having that healthy moderation, that healthy balance between, being online and not. But we can also use that as parents to help us. Maybe we have a teen that just really cannot come to us and talk to them. They have a hard time expressing their feelings, but maybe they're more able to express their feelings through text. So, a lot of counseling programs nowadays and even crisis lines communicate through text, because that's what teens are more comfortable with right now, because that's the world they're growing up in. And so the same thing for us parents, that if our child doesn't seem like they can really talk to us and express how they're feeling, and we're feeling really concerned, we can try reaching out via text and see if they're more apt to open up that way.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard that perspective before, and it makes total sense. And it also seems like it just seems like a different world for me completely, right?
Mhm.
However, that's exactly their reality. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of these situations and technologies that make them feel a little bit more like themselves, and in ways that they're able to communicate, right? It's
Right.
brilliant. Now, as we wrap the show, I'm wondering if there's any like one piece of advice or something that you wish all parents knew, whether they have a teen who is struggling, or they think they might, or if they just have some preteens and like kids who are school aged and they're just getting mentally prepared for what a like shitstorm it's going to be potentially with teenagers. Is there anything that's sort of on your heart to share that would feel like, I don't know, just really good advice for the listeners today?
I think I would say that it always starts with connection, right? So whether you're a parent of a young child or a teen struggling with depression, we always want to start with connection. And how can we nurture and strengthen that connective relationship with our child? And a lot of times when our teens are struggling with depression, they're feeling a lack of connection, whether that lack of connection is within the family, within the school community, the broader community, the spiritual side. They're feeling disconnected. And so when I have a parent that says, my teen won't talk to me, then I say, what are you doing to really nurture that relationship? Are you spending that quality time together? And a lot of times they're like, they don't want to spend time with me. But what I say is they do, but on their own terms. So find out what those terms are. What is it that they enjoy doing? What is it, how often and for how long do they want to spend time? Find out what works for them and then make it a priority to spend that time together. And then so just focusing on that connected relationship, and the more connection you have and the safer they feel, then the more they're going to open up about how they're feeling. And that is so key. If you have a teen struggling with depression, you need for them to be able to express how they're feeling and what they're thinking so that you can get them the support that they need.
Yeah, I like that very much. Following their lead, really giving them the autonomy to dictate like how they want to have that interaction, right? And to encourage that positive, almost like that positive attachment, right? Later, a little bit later in the years, a lot of these same theories that we can apply and have learned about with our young kids can still
Mhm.
apply with our older kids because I mean the there's a reason it's called a three-nager, right? Like, there are similarities between the teen brain and the things that are happening hormonally and, like, the toddler brain and the things that are happening hormonally down in that end of things, and so some of the techniques can be the same, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. If listeners are loving what they're hearing and feel really seen and supported by the advice that you've given today, Christina, can you let them know how they can continue to learn from you, work from you, where they can find you online, and what the next steps would be if there's someone who's sort of self-identifying right now as, yeah, I think I might be in the position where I need to help my teen and I don't know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely go to my website, empoweredparenting.family. You'll find all the resources, lots of free resources, the blog. You'll also find my social media, and then grab my book. I just published my book, Every Day, The Power of Everyday Grace, Parenting Teens with Depression. And all the things that we talked about, I go in further detail in my book of all the ways that you can connect with, support, and advocate for your teen struggling with depression.
Thank you. That's so amazing. We're going to definitely have the link in the show notes to website and the book and the free resource that you mentioned to help us sort of start to identify what's normal, what's atypical. Um, Such good information. I really appreciate you being here today and sharing all of this wisdom. I know that we're going to make big impact on the listeners, and this is a topic that doesn't get talked about a lot, but certainly is more common, I would venture to say, than we think.
Mhm.
And I know that there's a lot more openness and talk about how hard motherhood is in the early years. And I think there's still a lot of light to be shed on having these open discussions without guilt or shame or judgment about moms who are parenting the hard stuff in the teen years. So thank you for being that advocate and speaking up on behalf of the teens and the moms who are struggling, and for the work you do. It's a gift to the world. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And for everyone listening, until next week, keep on growing like a mother.